أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير صدق الله العلي العظيم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the 13th episode of the Sayyids series. And this episode, I intend it to be a disclaimer, a clarification, and most importantly, the completion of hujjah upon anybody who's watching. Completion of evidence. So that afterwards, nobody can misconstrue anything that we have previously covered in our videos, where we covered a variety of topics, talking about honoring the Sayyids with respect to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. However, certain comments that we observed, certain feedback that we got from certain people demonstrated to us that the message that we intended to deliver did not reach the way we wanted it to reach. Even though I believe, even though I'm not a perfect human being, I believe I properly put the message that I wanted to put across out there. However, still, in certain comments, which I will be responding to today, there has been some objections implying, indicating, asserting, stating that we in any form endorse tribalism or believe that a Sayyid is better than a non-Sayyid and these issues. However, the verse of the Holy Quran which I quoted, which I've had the honor of reciting before in the previous episodes, is, O people, verily we have created you from male and female, and we've made you nations and tribes so that you may get to know each other, and the best of you, verily the best of you in the eyes of Allah is the most pious and most God weary of you, and Allah is the all-knowing and all-wise, the all-aware. The message which we intend to deliver will start off by mentioning some ahadith which will make clear our view on tribalism, racism, whatever you want to call it. It is narrated in the hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Man kana fi qalbihi habbatun min khardalin min asabiyyati بعثه الله يوم القيامة مع أعراب الجاهلية. That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said, whoever has racism in his heart, the size of a mustard seed, on the Day of Judgment, Allah will raise him with the Bedouins of the time of Jahiliyyah. Another hadith, which is in Al-Kafi, in it is narrated by Imam Abi Abdullah Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, that he said, قال من تعصب أو تعصب له فقد خلع ربقة الإيمان من عنقه. That whoever discriminates or supports discrimination, he has taken off the collar of belief from his neck. It is narrated in Musnad Ahmad that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا أيها الناس ألا إن ربكم واحد وإن أباكم واحد ألا لا فضل لعربي على أعجمي ولا لأعجمي على عربي ولا لأحمر على أسود ولا أسود على أحمر إلا بالتقوى. O people, your Lord is one. Your father, your forefather, meaning Nabi Adam alayhi salam, is one. There is no virtue of an Arab over a foreigner, nor a foreigner over an Arab, and neither white skin over black skin, nor black skin over white skin, except by taqwa, righteousness. So it's important to clarify that because these topics are sensitive and unfortunately have become a taboo in communities, of talking about Sayyids, talking about Sadat, unfortunately has become a taboo. People are not used to hearing these things, so it's fully understandable that someone may come along and say, why are you promoting tribalism? Why are you promoting that Sayyids are better than non-Sayyids? Shouldn't everyone be treated equally? And these questions can come up in the minds, which is why we are making this episode in your service. In Surah Ali Imran, verse number 26, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَتُعِزُّ مَن تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَن تَشَاءُ. And you exalt who you please, and you abase who you please. From this verse, we understand a basic principle, which is that where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a selection or chooses, which is implied by the word tasha, whoever you will, so whoever you choose, it is accompanied by by exaltation, honoring, and the giving of respect from the people. This is something which is naturally a demand from other people, when these virtues are given to a certain person or a certain group, when it's given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are to be respected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives knowledge to somebody. It is naturally expected for somebody to respect that person more than others. Are those who have knowledge equal to those who don't? Somebody who honors his parents more than others is worthy of respect. Somebody who gives charity more than others is worthy of respect. Whatever virtue Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, naturally this comes with a need for respect, which is established with this verse of the Holy Quran. Now, in order to take you through the evidences that certain groups have been favored over others in the Holy Quran, without it implying racism or tribalism, let us start with Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 122. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأني فضلتكم على العالمين. O Bani Israel, remember the blessing which I bestowed upon you, and that I exalted you upon the worlds. So we understand that this verse is specific to that time for Bani Israel, for the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored them by sending amongst them Anbiya and Rusul. And we can see clearly through this way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored them. My question is, because we know that Bani Israel, not only is it the Jews, not only are they a religion, but they're also a ethnicity, they're also a tribe. So is this racism from Allah on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. This is not something that we believe. Rather, it is their connection with the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah favored them upon others. The favoring of Allah, as we mentioned earlier, inherently implies the needs of people respecting them. It is, of course, a different matter that they wasted the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a lot of them went astray. But this is enough for our argument that Allah enabled them, gave them at some point in time a degree of virtues which meant that they were exalted upon the world. The next verse of the Holy Quran is Surah Al-Imran, which is Surah 3, verse 33. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna Allah astafa Adama wa Nuhan wa Ali Ibrahim wa Al Imran ala al-Alameen. Verily Allah has selected, chosen Nabi Adam alayhi salam, wa Nuhan, and Nuh alayhi salam, and the progeny of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the progeny of Imran alayhi salam upon the worlds. Is this selection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala racist? Is it tribalism? Was there not any other lineages before the lineage of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam which splits before him? Why weren't they chosen for the greater prophets, the Anbiya and the Rusul that are mentioned in the Holy Quran? I'm talking about the tribes which split before, because we know that's not the only lineage in the world. Al-Ibrahim alayhi salam. There's many other lineages which split before. Why weren't they chosen for prophethood? Is this racism? I mean, they may have been chosen for prophethood, but the greater prophethood, the Ulul Azm prophethood. Is this racism? Or is it that the trials and tests passed by Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam and the promise of Allah to Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam is the cause? If you say this, you would be correct. Then it isn't racism, and if they were selected for this respect and this honor, then it is part of the divine wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is clearly visible in the next verse. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ذُرِّيَّةً بَعْضُهَا مِنْ بَعْضٍ وَاللَّهَ السَّمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. They are the progeny of each other. And Allah is the all-hearing and all-knowing. So this also remained in the progeny of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. But is this racism? No, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored the status of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. So although it may seem like racism to an untrained eye, it might seem like tribalism to somebody who doesn't understand how the favors of Allah work and how it's different to selection merely based on race, skin color, and these things. It's understandable how a person may understand this, but this, as I mentioned, is a completion of hujjah upon you. The next verse is Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5, verse 20. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ يَا قَوْمِ اذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ جَعَلَ فِيكُمْ أَنْبِيَاءَ وَجَعَلَكُمْ مُلُوكًا وَأَتَاكُمْ مَا لَمْ يُؤْتِ أَحَدًا مِنَ الْعَالَمِينَ. And remember when Musa said to his people, O my people, remember Allah's favors upon you when He raised prophets from amongst you, made you sovereign, made you kings, and gave you what He had never given anyone in the world. Is this racism? Is this tribalism? We refer to the previous explanations that we gave. Nabi Musa alayhi salam is also from the progeny of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. So now we have understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored certain nations over others, not out of racism, but out of divine wisdom and the completion of the covenants with Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. So how does this extend to honoring Sayyids? So someone comes and say, oh, you've shown how certain nations were favored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, clarifying that it wasn't racism, and that it was more to do with the divine favors and the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how does this extend to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam? I say, although it's a no-brainer, it's common sense if one thinks about it. If all these prophets, peace be upon him, who are the crowns of our heads, are selected for their limited part that they played in the establishment of the complete deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then surely the greatest creation of Allah, the Sayyid of all the khalaiq, all the creation, is worthy of more honor and more respect. Why? Because it is by the ijma' of the Muslimin that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi is the greatest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before we go further, let's address an objection quickly. Someone could say, I see where you're going with this, but these selections and this honoring was only prophets. It's only addressed to prophets. And prophets are, they're different to normal human beings. They're different to us. The answer to this is that you never paid attention to Surah Baqarah, verse 122. So it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya Bani Israel, adhkuru ni'mati allati an'amtu alaykum, wa anni faddaltukum ala al-alamin. Remember the favors. Who remembers favors? Those who either rejected them or forgot them in their pursuit of other things. So Allah is reminding those who are not careful with the blessings He brought upon them. Were prophets ungrateful for the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Far be it from anyone who is a Muslim to claim such a thing. Therefore, those who are being addressed are not prophets, yet Allah still says, فَضَّلْتُكُمْ, that I honored you above the worlds. That He favored them. And that we mentioned earlier, Allah's favor comes with respect. In the case of Bani Israel, it was only for that time that they were chosen. As we know that Nabi Ismail alayhi salam was chosen from the sons of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, and which means that it was only for their time. However, if this occurred even once, it is sufficient for our argument. Going back to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, he is the greatest creation of Allah, the master of all prophets, all of creation. How is it possible that this does not extend to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi? And we mentioned before that honoring a Sayyid is not honoring that Sayyid personally. This is not how it is seen by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are being honored for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Not because they are racially superior. The whole objection is baseless. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, do we Muslims respect him? Yes, we do. Why do we respect him? Because he's racially greater than us? No. We respect him because he is the greatest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he is the Nabi. And he is the Prophet who has more authority over us than we have over ourselves. We respect him because he is not equal to us. You respect Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. I respect Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Because he is not equal to us. He is the greatest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم. That the Prophet, peace be upon him, has a greater right over the believers than they have over themselves. So, how is it that he's equal to you? No, he isn't. So when you are honoring that Sayyid, you're not honoring that Sayyid because of his person. You're not. You're honoring him because of the connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. This is a karama for Rasulullah. This is for the honor of Rasulullah, not for that particular individual. Now, does this respect extend to his family links? Or does it not? Of course it does. The next part of the verse is after النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم وأزواجه أمهاتهم, and his wives are your mothers. Ya Rasulullah, we understand your authority, that you are the greatest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence you have more authority over us than we have over ourselves. But what is this clause that believers cannot marry wives after you? What's the need for this? What's the purpose of this? What's the logic behind it? In the Shi'i explanation, wives are afforded this treatment with regards to the forbiddance of marriage, that you cannot treat them like any woman and simply marry them after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Why? Because the wives are, is it because necessarily the wives deserve it? This is the Shi'i perspective. No, it's because of their connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. However, in the interpretation of Ahl Sunnah, it is not only marriage which is forbidden after him. They're called al-Mu'mineen. Why? Because A, you cannot marry them after the passing of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and you have to respect them as if they're your mothers because of the nisbah to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Why? Because of the family link to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, because they're linked to the greatest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that Nabi has greater authority than you have over yourself, and they are linked to him. This is why this has an effect over the wives of Rasulullah too. In both cases, the argument stands. Whether you take the Shi'i position or you take the Sunni position, the argument stands. Furthermore, to care and seek the best for their dhurriyyah, their progeny, is the sunnah of the Rusul, alayhimus salam, the sunnah of the prophets, the sunnah of the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the most complete of them. He is better than the rest in every way whatsoever. So, if that's the case, then surely Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would not only follow the path of the previous prophets in caring for his dhurriyyah, his progeny, but he will also excel them and go beyond them in that, because he's afdal and he is better than them, in every single way. What are examples of this? Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 124. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا قَالَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي. When your Lord tested Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam with certain words, and he fulfilled them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. I'm making you an imam for the people. What did Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam say? Just alhamdulillah, shukran lillah, end of story? He said, وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي. And what about my descendants? He's showing a care for his descendants. Furthermore, in Surah Ibrahim, Surah 14, verse 40, it says Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam made the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رَبِّ اجْعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي رَبَّنَا وَتَقَبَّلْ دُعَاء. My Lord, make me a person who upholds the salah, and from my descendants, وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي. O Lord, accept my prayer. Here is another. Surah Ali Imran, which is Surah 3, verse 38. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. هُنَالِكَ دَعَا زَكَرِيَّا رَبَّهُ قَالَ رَبِّي هَبْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ ذُرِّيَّةً طَيِّبَةً إِنَّكَ سَمِيعُ الدُّعَاء. O Lord, Zakaria alayhi salam prayed to his Lord, saying, my Lord, grants me by your grace righteous offspring, a righteous progeny, dhurriyyah. You are certainly the hearer of prayers. Furthermore, We have established certain things from the Holy Quran. What have we established? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored certain people over others, not because of their race, not because of their skin color, not because of their eye color, not because of their hair color, not because of certain attributes that certain families have in comparison to others, but because of the fact that they are linked to the covenant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that this is not tribalism, this is not racism, and in their respective times they were worthy of respect. And in the cases of the prophets, peace be upon them, they're still worthy of respect. Now, going further into the talk of the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi is quoted in Sahih Muslim, and this is hujjah upon anyone who belongs to Ahl Sunnah. He said, وَأَنَا تَارِكٌ فِيكُمْ ثَقَلَيْنِ أَوَّلُهُمَا كِتَابُ اللَّهِ فِيهِ الْهُدَى وَالنُّورِ فَخُذُوا بِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَاسْتَمْسِكُوا بِهِ فحث على كتاب الله ورغب فيه ثم قال وأهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي فقال له حسين ومن أهل بيته يا زيد أليس نساءه من أهل بيته؟ قال نساءه من أهل بيته ولكن أهل بيته من حرم الصدقة بعده. قال ومن هم؟ قال هم آل علي وآل عقيل وآل جعفر وآل عباس. As I said, it's in Sahih Muslim. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said, I am leaving you with two weighty things. The first is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which there is the right guidance and light, so hold fast to the book of Allah and adhere to it. He exhorted us to hold fast to the book of Allah and then said, the second is the members of my household. I remind you by Allah of my household. I remind you by Allah of my household. I remind you by Allah of my household. The narrator, Hussein, said to Zayd, the one who's narrating from Zayd, who are the members of his household, O Zayd? Aren't his wives the members of his family? Thereupon Zayd said, his wives are members of his family, but here the members of his family are those for whom the zakat is forbidden. The zakat is forbidden. And then he asked, who are they? And Zayd said, Ali and the offspring of Ali, Aqil and the offspring of Aqil, the offspring of Ja'far al-Tayyar and the offspring of Abbas. Now, as we can see, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, according to the Sunni view, is leaving the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to be honored, and their descendants to be honored, and reminds of them 3 times. And if that's the case, then we know the progeny of Ali takes precedence over the progeny of Ja'far al-Tayyar and Aqil and Abbas, because it's only through the line of Ali alayhi salam and Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha that the progeny of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam continued. For those who are from the Shi'i school of thought, here is a hadith for you. It is narrated by Sulaiman al-Ghazi from Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, who narrated from Musa ibn Ja'far. And the chain continues through the blessed forefathers of Imam Musa, Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam, until it reaches Imam Ali alayhi salam, and then it says, قال, so Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying, قال Rasulillah. So Imam Ali alayhi salam said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أربعة أنا لهم شفيع ولو أتوا بذنوب أهل الأرض. So I am the intercessor for 4 types of people, even if they come with the sins of the whole of the world. الضارب بالسيف أمام ذريتي, the one who strikes his swords in front of my dhurriya, meaning in their protection. والقاضي لهم حوائجهم, and the one who fulfills their needs. And then he says, the one who works for their, and then he says, pardon me, والساعي لهم في مصالحهم عندما اضطروا إليه والمحب لهم بقلبه ولسانه. That's the one who strikes swords with the sword in front of my descendants, the one who fulfills their needs, the one who works for their interests. And what else, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa, the one who loves them with his heart and his tongue. And this is in Wasa'il Ashia. So this is one thing that we understand up to now, that the progeny of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, when they're honored, is honored for the sake of Rasulullah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, in one case, according to the Sunni tradition, is saying, I remind you of Allah about my Ahlul Bayt. Now the Sunni interpretation is, take care of them, right? For whose sake? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's sake. In the Shi'i tradition, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is personally taking the role of the intercessor for those who honor his progeny. So this is also for his sake. Another matter to discuss is the issue of sadaqah and its fiqhi ruling pertaining to that of the Sayyids. In Al-Istibsar, which is a Shi'i book of hadith, it's narrated from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam that he said, An Abi Abdullah alayhi salam قال. So the narrator saying, سألته هل تحل لبني هاشم الصدقة? Is it, so he's saying, he asked as-Sadiq alayhi salam, is صدقة halal for Bani Hashim? قال لا, he said no. قلت, I said, لمواليهم, who about their clients, موالي. قال تحل لمواليهم ولا تحل لهم إلا صدقة بعضهم على بعض. So he said, I asked, what about the clients? He said, it is permissible for the clients to receive it, but it is not permissible for them, i.e. the Banu Hashim, to receive anything except the zakat of them when it is given from one of them to another. Some of them for others of them. Sunni hadith in Sahih Muslim. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, in a long hadith, Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم said, إن هذه الصدقات إنما هي أوساخ الناس وإنها لا تحل لمحمد ولا لآل محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. Verily, these charities are impurities of the people, أوساخ, the dirt from the hands of the people. And it is not permissible for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, and also not for the family of Muhammad, and it's also not permissible for the family of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. So we understand from this that the ruling is of the family is there because the family is linked to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Question: Sadaqah is there to benefit the people. Then how is it permitted for non-Sayyids to take sadaqah when it is forbidden for Sayyids? It's dirt from the hands of the people, right? Is this racism? Is this tribalism? Or is it honoring Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi? We all agree Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is our master. Do we or do we not? It is not only not halal, it is not only haram for a Sayyid to take this sadaqah from non-Sayyids, but it's also permissible for Sayyids to take from each other. There's ittifaq on this. All the ulama, most of the ulama in fact, are unanimous, the ulama of fiqh, are unanimous on the fact that a Sayyid can take sadaqah from another Sayyid. So isn't it considered dirt from the hands of the people if a Sayyid gives it to another Sayyid? Why the distinction? Is this racism? Is this tribalism? Or is it that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi did not want non-Sayyids to pity his descendants for his sake? For his sake. Why is it such an important matter to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi that this pertains to halal and haram? Halal and haram. It's not highly discouraged to give sadaqah, obligatory zakat, to a Sayyid. It's not highly discouraged. It is haram. It is to do with halal and haram. Is this racism? Is this tribalism? There is an ijma' on the fact that there are rules of obligatory sadaqah, specifically with regards to Al-Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Unless you have a problem with Islam itself. Why are you not willing to honor Sayyids? For the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, where you follow this rule that Sayyids cannot take sadaqah from you. Do you understand that sadaqah is forbidden even upon the sinful Sayyids? If that's the case, then why are you making a distinction that just because a Sayyid is sinning, then we don't have to respect them, or we don't have to honor them for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi? When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi does not make the distinction himself. What value does Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi hold for you? Let's take it a step further. If a Sayyid comes forward and says, I am a Sayyid, I cannot accept this sadaqah. Let's say somebody's given him sadaqah, obligatory sadaqah. He says, I cannot take it. Is he being proud? Is he right? Is he correct to say, no, I can't have this? Or is he supposed to tell people he's a Sayyid? It is right to say no, right? So isn't an ancestry something that's supposed to be kept quiet, private? You're not supposed to speak about it. It has nothing to do with Islam. Then how does the Sayyid inform a non-Sayyid that I cannot take sadaqah from you? I already said there's ijma' between all the ulama of fiqh, most of the ulama of fiqh, that this is the case. So if a Sayyid can refuse this, as it is not befitting of him to take sadaqah from a non-Sayyid, what is the issue when a Sayyid comes to make a video to educate others about the rights of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi? Why are the other rights of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wasallam preached and upheld, but when it comes to this, all of a sudden there's a taboo? No, we can't speak about this. Now I'm speaking to Sayyids and non-Sayyids. We can't speak about this because somebody may misconstrue it for tribalism or racism. This is pure ignorance. Why is it surprising if it is wajib to honor the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam for his sake, for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi? You accept that you can't marry the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi after him, you can't marry them after him, out of respect for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. So you, in one place you follow it, and in the other place you don't follow it? In one case it's not tribalism, it's not racism, it's not a preferential treatment. But in this case it is. Racism is the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, qualities which either make them superior or inferior to others. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi is better than you, is better than me, is better than all of us. And this ikram, this takreem, this honoring is for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. We don't say Sayyids are superior to non-Sayyids. They both have the hisab and the kitab to do with. And piety will be the determining factor. The difference here is honoring the Sayyids is honoring Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. And he who does not honor Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi should not call himself a Muslim. Yes, there are those who go around using being a Sayyid, if they are a Sayyid, to claim worldly benefits, to, promote actual racism. Let's come together and condemn it together. We are together, we're on the same page. To use any position to seek worldly, accumulate wealth and, to accumulate baseless respect, it means nothing. And this is something we condemn together. But when it comes to, this shouldn't be mixed up with respecting a Sayyid for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. This is unjust. The criterion at the end of the day is, in who is better in the eyes of Allah, is taqwa. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.